What do I admire most about the people that raised me? I think one thing that I think back about my life, number one is it's a vast amount of people that raised me. I think before I get into what I admire about them, I think it's just the collective them that I owe an immense amount of gratitude toward. I was raised by my mom. I was raised by my grandma and my grandpa. I was raised by my aunt. I was in part raised by cousins, even though they were younger than me. We still were kind of grew up together. I was raised by my uncle, who's my uncle by marriage. I was raised by his family and his mom and dad. Shout out G-Mom, Big Daddy. I was raised by our neighbors and our friends and next door neighbors we had for a long time, James and Elaine. They were the first people I ever knew that had a computer. And when I think about that, I think what I admire most is their desire, their willingness to allow me to be a part of their life. Welcome to the Rocky Garza Show, where we explore the collision of a deeply meaningful life and a wildly impactful career. I'm your host, Rocky Garza, and with over a decade of experience as a coach, consultant, and keynote speaker to many Fortune 500 companies, I'm here to share personal stories and expert advice to help you gain clarity, build confidence, and discover that you too can build the life you actually want. Whether you're a high achiever looking for a more full life or a leader striving for professional success with purpose, this podcast was designed with you in mind. Today we are looking at a game that we have called Tell Me About That. And this is a 50-question card deck that we built to really spark curiosity between each other, between the people that are in your life, your friends, your family, your coworkers, and it's designed to spark curiosity and allow us to get to know each other a little bit better. And so what I thought I would do today is a way to get to know some of you better, most importantly, a way for you to get to know me better, is I want to go through a few Tell Me About That questions today. I'm just going to select them at random to see what pops up. And that way, you can get to know me a little bit better. I can get to know you a little bit better. And again, you can go to tellmeaboutthat.com. Again, that's www.tellmeaboutthat.com. And you can get a copy of your game there if you want to check it out. And you'll notice that it's just questions. It's got 50 different questions in here for you to be able to ask. We have folks use it all the time for their family. They use it on vacations. They use it with their team in their office. It's just a really, really great resource that we have. And so what I want to do today is I want to go through just a few Tell Me About That questions. We'll keep today's episode nice and short and sweet. But I want to go through today's episode to answer a few questions. And I know that a few folks of you have reached out to me and just asked about me, sort of asked about my origin story, and maybe you're new followers and you're trying to figure out who is this guy and how did he get here and why are we listening to anything he has to say? And so I'd love to tell you a little bit about myself by using our Tell Me About That deck. And so let's jump in. Question number one from the Tell Me About That deck. We're just going to select him here at random. We're going to pull through here. All right. This says, what do you admire most about the people who raised you? And just so that we know that, we can sit here, what do you admire most about the people that raised you? So number one, I think it's a great question for you to pose to yourself. But I'll answer that. What do I admire most about the people that raised me? I think one thing that I think back about my life, number one is it's a vast amount of people that raised me. I think before I get into what I admire about them, I think it's just the collective them that I owe an immense amount of gratitude toward. I was raised by my mom. I was raised by my grandma and my grandpa. I was raised by my aunt. I was in part raised by cousins, even though they were younger than me. We still were kind of grew up together. I was raised by my uncle, who's my uncle by marriage. I was raised by his family and his mom and dad. Shout out G-Mom, Big Daddy. I was raised by our neighbors and our friends and next door neighbors we had for a long time, James and Elaine. They were the first people I ever knew that had a computer. And when I think about that, I think what I admire most is their desire, their willingness to allow me to be a part of their life. There were so many people over the course of my life that just willfully allowed me space really, really into their life. They allowed me space into their world and allowed me to attend holidays with them and Christmases with them. And they took me to concerts and allowed me to go on family vacations. And I don't say that like I didn't have a family. They were a part of my family, but my mom was working. She was doing everything she possibly could to take care of herself and to take care of me. And so that often meant that obviously, like a lot of single moms, that I needed someplace to go. I remember there were neighbors when I was in first and second grade, that their neighbors in our apartment complex, that after school I would go to their house with their kids and I would hang out with them. And the amount of people that had influence on my life. If I had to pick a few, the things I admire most about the people that raised me, the thing I admire most about my grandfather is that he willfully took me in as one of his own. Even though I'm not his child, even though he has no children of his own, he raised me like I was his child. And he didn't have to do that. There's a lot of things he did for me and decisions he made in my life that he said yes to. And I'm immensely grateful for that. I admire about my grandma. She is resilient. She is tough. She didn't have the easiest life at one point, and she has battled through in true matriarch fashion. She is the glue that has held our family together, and she just never gives up on you. No matter what, she never gives up on you, and I deeply admire that. My mom, I admire that she worked hard. She worked really hard, and she did everything that she could within her power to provide the best life possible that she could. And she was always there, no matter what. She was always with me. And then I think I admire about my dad. Although I didn't grow up with my dad, my parents got divorced when I was 2, and I never lived with him growing up. I admire his deep work ethic, his ability to be able to consistently work 7 days a week, sometimes 10, 12 hours a day. We're talking decades, 40, 50 years he's been working that way. And that's the way that he shows you that he loves you. And I deeply admire that about him. All right, good question. Let's go to round number 2 of Tell Me About That. We'll select another one here. It says, what is your default reaction, Rocky? Is it fight, flight, or freeze? Well, I don't know if this will surprise many of you, but I can tell you that my default reaction typically is fight. I am not somebody, this happens to me all the time. I often find myself in scenarios, and unfortunately, whether it's serious scenarios like car accidents, or a scenario in public, or with someone needing help, or a scenario where you're sort of that response kicks in. And my typical response normally is fight. I am not necessarily a freezer. Rarely am I a flight. Mostly I'm trying to jump in the middle of the action, sometimes to the cause of my own detriment, but I can find myself very much in that space. And so I think if I had to pick one of those things, I think if people in my life had to pick one, I think that's the thing that they would choose. And so that's my go-to answer there, is that. All right, let's go. Let's randomly select here. Let's see. The next question is, what are you thinking about the most of the time? Ooh, great question. It's a part of our identity mapping process too. Shout out through those in here. What are you thinking about most of the time? I think as I look at my life, what I'm thinking about the most of the time is honestly what I am doing right this second. Sometimes probably to the cause of my own detriment occasionally, but I attempt to be a very present person. I am most often thinking about the thing that is right in front of me right this second. And I don't say that as a win or a loss. I don't say that as better or worse or good or bad. I simply say that as I work really hard to maintain a level of presence. I work really hard to allow myself to be right here, right now. And if something's going on later on today that I got to get to, I get it and I'll get there. But I'm not there right now. Right now, I am right here. And so I do my very best to work really hard to get to a place to where I can maintain that level of presence as often as I possibly can. So, all right, let's do one more question here. Again, what we're doing right now is we are walking through Tell Me About That. Tell Me About That is a 50-question card game that can be used by friends, family, coworkers in a professional setting. You can get it at you can get it at tellmeaboutthat.com. And today, we just as a little get to know Rocky a little bit, I'm just going through and selecting some random Tell Me About That cards so that I can answer them for myself, so that I can share those answers with you, and we can get to know each other a little bit better. This last question for us is, what is one of your gifts? What is one of your gifts? And by the way, I encourage you to think through all these questions as well, things for you to think through. Take them, go back and ask them to your team, ask them to your coworkers. But what is one of your gifts? Uh, I believe that one of my greatest gifts is the ability to create an environment that allows someone to get vulnerable, especially in what would be considered high stakes scenarios. Meaningful moments in important places. We're specifically in the workplace. We're doing quarterly business reviews. We are looking at strategic planning for the year or for the quarter. We're having meaningful dialogue with our executive teams together. I think one of my greatest gifts is the ability to allow people to put their guard down and to create a level of vulnerability that allows us to have deep, meaningful, and valuable conversation in a very short amount of time. I was recently I was actually recording a podcast episode for the Stay Paid podcast yesterday. Shout out to Luke and Steven and that team over there, Cody and Josh, for having me on their show. And one thing that I realized is that in a 32-minute podcast episode, we were able to, even as podcast hosts, they were able to put their guard down. They were sharing answers about themselves. They were getting vulnerable with how they thought and how they felt. And the reality was it was just because they were needing an invitation. And so I believe one of my greatest gifts is the ability to allow individuals, high achievers who are normally the ones with the answer, an opportunity to put your guard down, to look as unbiasedly as possible at what is true, not good or bad or not right or wrong, but what is true in order to give yourself the opportunity to see where it is that you want to go. Oftentimes, we're so consumed with the destination we believe we're supposed to be at that we rarely give enough attention to the steps that we're taking on a daily basis. And so I believe that's one of my greatest gifts, both individually, one-on-one, in groups, from the stage, in workshop experiences, is to create the kind of environment where people can fully be themselves. I so appreciate you being here with me for a quick episode of Tell Me About That. We're going to roll these more into it. You're going to hear more about Tell Me About That as we begin to bring some guests on our show. We're going to always have the opportunity for them to answer a Tell Me About That question at random. And again, you can get that at tellmeaboutthat.com. I so appreciate you being here. Hopefully you feel like you know me a little bit better, and we'll continue to use the questions, and I'll continue to share more about myself and who I am and what we're doing here at rockygarza.com. As always, if you haven't, make sure and go to rockygarza.com/beyond success. That's where you can check out everything that we're doing and everything we have coming up in the future. We'd love to have you at our next event, but all you got to do is go to rockygarza.com/beyond success and check that out. So appreciate you. Thanks for being here, and let's keep going.